Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, good evening. This is Moreh Drake at the bridge at Hagesher, where we're talking about let's study Torah. Well, let's look at a couple of different things tonight. I came across something this last week that really piqued my interest. I got to studying it and looking at it a little bit. So I want to talk about that tonight. I want to finish also with what I was talking about because I came across some new information concerning Israel and the reform there. So welcome everyone to Torah for All here at Hagesher, and just wanted to welcome you tonight, and so we can get started here. I'm going to be in the future checking out so I can check your links and see what's what. Things running a little behind today, but God bless you all. I'm glad you're here. So I'm so glad that you're joining us tonight. Hopefully you have the link. If not, you can always go back and review this. So here I am talking with you tonight at Hagesher, the bridge. I want to remind you too, I don't have the button up there, but there's a button underneath to subscribe and to like and to share on YouTube. So please be sure and do that because it really helps us. The more that's subscribe, the more it really helps us get the word out. And we're going to be talking about a number of different scriptures here in the future. I've got just a couple of things tonight that is on my heart and on my mind with what is going on right now on the ground. So as we get into this tonight, we were talking about Israel's reform of the Supreme Court this last week. On Bridge to Israel, we talked about that. I came across some new information concerning a gentleman by the name of Yuval Noah Harari. And this gentleman issued basically a challenge or a message to Benjamin Netanyahu. And in that challenge, he said, we're going to stop this reform. Well, and you have to understand who Harari is. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But in this article, my message to Benjamin Netanyahu, stop your coup or we'll stop the country. And this is what's been going on behind the scenes. This man is an advisor to George Soros and an advisor to Klaus Schwab. So that should tell you where his head and his heart are in this situation. So they're the ones behind all the demonstrations in Israel. In fact, a lot of the demonstrators, and there's thousands upon thousands of demonstrators they've raised up and stirred up there, and they're calling it the death to democracy and all of that. And so he's written this article, basically just telling them to stop everything, to the IDF, the Shin Bet, the Mossad, the Israeli police. If the moment of truth comes, make the right choice. Go down in history as a protesters of the citizens, not as the servants of the despots. And again, you can refer back to the Bridge to Israel one I did on Thursday that I explained the reform and what it really is about. So I would encourage you to go back and look at that on that one. I'm going to be sending links out on all of these as well. But when I saw this article And if you'll look at the picture up there that says must resist, the one, I'm sorry, not there, but the one up in the corner right there that says must resist, that reminded me very, very much of something that unfortunately I was a part of when I was young and dumb. Okay? I was one of those hippies, and thank God I was one of them that, everybody's been talking about the Jesus Revolution movie. I was one of those of that era that came to the Lord during that time. But prior to that, I was a hippie. I lived in a commune. I did the drug kind of stuff and all that. And I marched in the demonstrations, power to the people, power to the people. And as I started analyzing it, I realized that everything that they were talking about was Marxist ideology. And that's exactly what we see happening today when we see this must resist sign up here in the corner. So that's exactly what's happening today. And so you need to keep that in mind whenever you hear these things about the death to democracy and the same kind of subject matter here in this country. And it's all a sign of the end times. Yeshua said, when you see these things come to pass, don't be fearful. Again, my message to you is don't be fearful, but look up and keep your thoughts on the Lord. And He will direct us through this. His light is to shine brighter and brighter in each of us. Now, as I was also going through this, I came across something else. Part of this with Harari, he was advocating a technology, a new technology that's been being developed for several years now. And part of that technology has to do with quantum dots. What are quantum dots, you ask me? Well, quantum dots are zero-dimensional, microscopic particles, similar to atoms but different, that have light qualities to them, L-I-G-H-T, light qualities to them, that they can emit light in certain patterns. And the uses of them are going to be for a type of LED, making thinner and thinner screens. And since they're zero-dimensional, it means that they actually have no thickness to them. And so it's beyond most of our comprehension. But where you see these different scenes in movies about people throwing the pictures up, and you can see through the pictures, and they're touching this and touching that. Quantum dots could make that type of thing for quantum computing absolutely possible. And they're experimenting with this stuff all of the time. And so there is, in 2019, and I'm going to switch here, go down here to my next slide. Well, going back briefly to Harari. Let me just go back here to Harari, because he said something, and this has to do with the quantum dots as well. He made this statement. He's an advisor to the WEF founder and chairman Klaus Schwab, and he called the outbreak of COVID-19 a kind of watershed event for surveillance. You hear that term? For surveillance. Not just part because surveillance is spreading everywhere with the disease, but because it is being implemented, quote, unquote, under the skin That is, it is literally monitoring our internal physical state and health status. My, oh my, oh my. So, one of the uses, and this is being made possible by these quantum dots. Okay. MIT has been experimenting a lot, developing a lot. And so you see this article right up here. Nope, right up here. Storing medical information below the skin's surface. Oh my, what does that sound like? Well, MIT researchers have now developed a novel way, and this was in 2019, a novel way to record a patient's vaccination history, storing the data in a pattern of dye invisible to the naked eye that is delivered under the skin at the same time as a vaccine. Now, what this makes possible, you see this other clip right here, right above me, which talks about, if you'll remember the Affordable Care Act with insurance, and there was a article in there about the RFID chip. The RFID chip is a chip that about the size of a grain of rice, the original development of it, and it transmits information through radio frequencies. Well, the difference between the RFID chip and the quantum dots is that they transmit information through light emitting. They have a light emitting ability to them. And so this MIT article points out, and you can see right here this picture, and you see a picture of a type of a micro needle on the far, I think it's the far right on your screen, probably the far right. Anyways, that micro needle is a patch that goes into the skin and develops this invisible ink. Again, remember, microdots are zero dimensional. That means they're beyond this world, if you can think of it that way. Okay? But they have a light emitting function to them so that they can deliver information from underneath the skin to a special reader in a cell phone. Get a load of that. And all kinds of things can be stored in this, not just your medical information, but some other articles I read were talking about financial information. And this last week, there's been all the news about the bank shutdowns and all of this. Your financial information could be stored in these quantum dot and delivered through this micro multi-needle type patch. And so that's something to think about. I mean, that sounds like total science fiction, right? But it's science fact today. We need to understand this is science fact. They have the ability to do this today, and it is being done in some cases, in some places. And so if you remember the Affordable Care Act, there was a clause buried way down in the Affordable Care Act, and it stirred up a lot of controversy. People were saying that, It made the RFID chip implantation mandatory. I'm going to say right now, no, it did not make it mandatory. However, it did have a clause in it stating that part of its ability, authorized by the FDA, that's this little article here above me, wherever I am, this article right up here, okay? It had the ability to read informational under the skin technology. It was being permitted to do, which means that legislation in the future could be enlarged upon and authorized to have that done. So I'm not saying there is any legislation that makes it mandatory at this point. Not saying that at all. So please don't say that Moreh Drake said, oh, this is a mandatory thing and you're going to be marked with it and all that. No, that's not what I'm saying. But the legislation in the Affordable Care Act did have a clause in it that would allow it to be enlarged upon in the future, making it possibly a mandatory thing in the future. Not saying it is now, but this is something to keep an eye on. So, with all of that, we have, we really don't have anything to fear. We're believers. Now, I know there's certain ideologies that say, okay, well, we don't have to worry about that because that's never going to happen to us. We're going to be with Jesus and all of that. Well, many people will pass from this world between now and whenever that happens, and yes, they'll be with the Lord. But right now, we need to be aware because so many things are happening. And I remember 30, 40 years ago, even longer than that, teachings that was taught that were saying that the things that you and I are seeing happen all around us today would not happen until the believers were removed from the earth. But unfortunately, things that you and I thought we would never see, we're seeing happen all around us. And so when I see this type of thing with this microchip, it causes me, and these quantum dots, it causes me to think of the scripture in the book of Revelation, in Revelation 13:16, where it talks about the beast that forces everyone, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on a right hand or on the forehead. And verse 17 goes on and says, preventing anyone from buying or selling unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This is where wisdom is needed. Wisdom's always needed, but especially this is where wisdom is needed. Those who understand should count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a person, and its number is 666. Now, I want to just make a little caveat, because a number of years ago, I taught on this verse, and I pointed out that in the original scriptures, in the Greek, it did not explicitly say 666. There was a special mark that it was in Greek, or anyways, I'm not going to go into that at this point, particularly on YouTube. But some translations later on translated 655, some translated 665. So wisdom is needed in this. But either way, we need to understand whether there's people that teach, and I have taught at times that the mark of the beast is the ideology of the world getting into our mind. That's part of it. We are to be separate. The word sanctify, we're to be sanctified. And the word sanctified simply means to be separate from the world. So you and I need to be separate from the world. But this is a technology that's moving faster than most of us can comprehend. And there's verses as well that talk about in the latter days that knowledge would increase in a manifold way, exponentially, which is exactly what's happening. So all I got to say right now is that we need to keep our hearts and our minds on the Lord in all cases. Study His Torah. I want to get into some little deeper Torah studies. I want to do like 15, 20-minute segments on what scriptures say about a certain subject and what some people have said their ideology is, and we'll look at the scriptures concerning that. But right now, I just want to encourage you. And if you like this teaching, if you like this format, please subscribe, like, share, send us a comment, tell us, send us an email, and so that we can do more and more of these. So we just appreciate you so very much. So right now, I just want to say, shalom and good evening. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. And we just say to you, Shavua Tov, have a great week. We love you all very much. And pray for me as I do these. Send me a note of encouragement, a note telling me what you'd like to see, what you'd like to hear me talk about and teach about. So we thank you so much. God bless you all. And we give you to the Lord this evening. Shavua Tov. We love you. Bye-bye.